Okay, I think we are live and 32 people so far and counting. Hope everyone is doing well this morning. Thank you so much for joining, and such an exciting topic today about all things compliance, but we're going to make it really fun. I have a wonderful co-host here with me today, but before we dive in, it's great to see a strong group. I'd love to get a sense of who's in the room. Feel free to drop in the chat where you're dialing in from today, maybe what role you have, what company you're from, if you're happy to share. I'd love to see all the locations coming in. Hello from Berlin.
Wow, wonderful. Ooh, more
NYC,
people, Berlin.
me too. I'm also in NYC. Hamburg, Toronto. This is always so fun. Austin, Texas. I'm actually going there this weekend.
Oh, cool.
Family baby shower, yeah.
Oh, nice.
San Antonio, Wisconsin. Good morning from New York. I love it. Any like specific roles in the room? Like, are we operations, people ops, people partner, maybe some finance and legal friends? Nice. Recruiters, send help. Oh my gosh. Sending you all the help.
Love it.
Generalists. Love it. Head of people. Wow, we have a great mix in the room. Wait about 1 more minute so we can have some more people hopping on and joining. Cyprus. Nice. So good. Well, nice. Feel free to keep active in the chat. It's really, again, really great to have you all here today. We're going to keep things pretty interactive throughout, so please feel free to use the chat as we go, and we'll leave time for Q&A at the end. But today's session, like I said, focused on compliance and all the challenges that brings to HR teams, in particular, the compliance issues that surface late when something has already gone wrong. So in our experience, gaps rarely come from the lack of effort. More often, they're resulted from fragmented systems, unclear ownership, outdated documentation, or people data that hasn't been reviewed consistently over time. So the goal of this conversation is prevention. We want to make sure compliance feels less reactive and less intimidating, and instead talk about how HR can really build a setup that holds over time and reduces risk over time. So before we dive in, I would like to do a short introduction. I'm Sammie Masley. I'm a senior people ops manager here at Leapsome. I have about 10 years of experience in the people ops space. My roles often look over all things people data and compliance. But I'm really excited about today's discussion because we're joined by an amazing speaker, Erica, the CEO and Managing Director at KUNO. Erica works closely with HR and people teams on audits, recurring reporting requirements, complex situations like organizational change. She brings a very practical, real-world perspective on what actually gets flagged, what creates follow-up, and what strong audit-ready teams do differently. So, Erica, we're thrilled to have you with us today. I'd love for you to do a short intro for everyone as well.
Yes, thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you for having me. I'm really looking forward to the conversation. As you said, I'm Erica. I'm CEO and Managing Director of KUNO. KUNO is an HR and payroll agency, and we're based in Berlin, so it's nice to see a lot of Berliners here. We, as you mentioned, we work closely with teams across different organizations, and we support them in everything HR and payroll, of course, especially the bridge between those two departments, but also during audits or recurring reports. We do a lot of sparring with those clients, and most importantly, we focus on really hands-on day-to-day operation support. Myself, I have over 15 years of experience in HR, and I look at it from different perspectives from that experience. So starting as an HR manager, I can remember very well having those compliance situations where somebody asked for a report and I slowly started sweating. Then as a team lead also, where the table was flipped and I had to request some reports and found some inconsistency in the information I received. And now from the outside perspective, looking into other companies and flagging potential challenges that might arise in their day-to-day work is also very interesting. Yeah, so like I said, I'm really looking forward to the conversation, especially since it's a topic not everybody wants to talk about, but once it comes, you have to talk about it.
Yeah, I'm excited too. And for everyone joining us, we did like a little prep call last week, and I was like, Erica, we were already like, we could do the webinar right now. We have so much to talk about, and like all different things, because I think you being based in Berlin, I'm here in the US, we were kind of comparing notes. So excited to dive in there. But before we start, we're going to do a little warm-up poll for the audience. So first question, if a surprise compliance audit were to happen tomorrow, you're like, how would you feel? Are we feeling calm and collected? Are we feeling slightly stressed, but we manage? I'd need a strong coffee and a checklist, or full-blown panic. Please don't let this happen. So I think the poll is live. If you want to go ahead and submit your votes. What do we have? What? Okay, slightly stressed, but we managed. It seems to be the winner so far. We did have someone say full-blown panic, so hopefully after today we can prevent the panics. Okay, about half of everyone's landing on the slightly stressed, but we'd manage. So I'm hoping
that a lot
of
strong coffee is needed.
Strong coffees, yeah, exactly. Well, nice. I think that's a great way to kind of kick us off and like set the scene. So Erica, I think it's important to identify like where compliance usually breaks down. So what, from your opinion, are kind of those early warning signs that a team is drifting out of compliance, even if nothing has gone wrong yet, even if you haven't gotten that request for it?
Yeah, I think the poll already shows it a little bit, or what I mentioned, being an HR manager and slightly being stressed when a request comes in, like, can you quickly pull an employee overview for a time period, let's say 2022 to 2025. And when I notice that teams are stressed with such a seemingly simple request, I kind of think, okay, there might be some warning signs there. Or sometimes you get responses like, let me check where that is. Where it is, you have to check that. Okay, that's a little bit concerning. Or I'll need to piece it together from different systems. That's a big red flag for me. And I think most importantly, especially, or I don't know if it's within small teams or larger teams, but if somebody says, I'll have to ask my colleague because they know all about it, they know the process. And if there's one person that knows everything, wonderful for them, but what happens if that person leaves or is sick or whatever? So that's a big warning sign that I would also look at.
Yeah, and I've definitely been in the situation where, like, on previous teams where there's kind of one expert for all these things, and then they're on vacation, and you need you have a deadline to submit the audit request or whatever by the end of the week. They're on vacation. You don't want to be messaging them when they're on the beach. So yeah, preventing all of that. And I think one thing that also stands out to me, like when it comes to the gaps, is like tooling and data fragmentation. So I feel like when your HR systems don't really talk to each other, you kind of have to pull like this from your HRIS, this from your performance review, this from payroll, and you kind of get like, I think the trails break down a little bit. So really like seeing where you can consolidate those tooling. I also think, like, talking about one owner, I think it's important to clarify those roles between all your cross-functional teams. So, HR, we work really closely with legal, finance, leadership, all those things. And sometimes finance owns a lot of these documentations and legal. So I think when everyone else assumes that they're handling compliance, that's when, things can really slip through the cracks.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, super important to be close with your cross-functional teams.
Very important. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would second that.
Yeah, exactly. So how often do compliance issues only surface after a trigger, like an audit, restructuring, or leadership change? Like when are you seeing that happen?
To be honest, quite often. I mean, sometimes it's not a bad thing, because when something is triggered, you notice, okay, we should have a look at this again. But yeah, it's quite often, I think. So leadership changes, for instance, I think is a simple one. If you have a new team lead, a new department head, new CEO, they might just be asking different questions than what you're used to, or perhaps reports that you've been setting up over the years now have to be changed. Now you have to look at, okay, what other information do I need to put in there, and so on. And during audits and restructurings, of course, there you see a lot of topics, like missing readiness of data, or documents that might be missing workflows, and so on. And I mean, in Germany, especially, there's also a change coming. So I think most Germans will nod their head right now. The European Pay Transparency Act that's going to come, where companies will have to be able to show pay differences that might lie in their companies, but that they have to show that they're based on objective criteria, and they need to be able to document that. So if you ask yourself right now, would I be able to show that if the audit, or if an audit would happen tomorrow, would you actually be able to do that? Would you be able to first know where are pay differences, and are they actually based on gender neutral criteria? Is that documented anywhere? So, that's a trigger that can be used as an opportunity before the audit actually happens.
Yeah, and just as an ad hoc side question, if, these new laws are coming out, I know that pay transparency is a big one coming in Germany. How do you kind of stay on top of these things coming down the pipeline? Like, do you have like a legal partner you trust, or at least from the US perspective, here we have like a PEO, a professional employment organization. So a lot of times they're in charge of the compliance things. They let us know, hey, there's this new law coming down the pipeline, make sure you have this and this ready. But do you have like anything specific that people can kind of stay on the pulse?
I mean, I think a lot of HR managers have a lot of knowledge within them. You have a gut feeling of how we should look into this. Especially when an audit happened, it's not that everything is going wrong or anything. It's just things that are being parked for, let's look into this at a later time. But you have a little bit of a gut feeling like we should look into this. And I think HR managers have a lot in their mind already. It's just bringing that down on paper and being able to explain it to an outside person.
Yeah, exactly. And then when the audit actually happens, like what types of documentation or data inconsistencies most often raise red flags for you? What do you see there?
Yeah, I think this might also differ between Germany and the US. In Germany, Germany is very bureaucratic, very administrative, and so on. So I always think a little bit in categories of situations. Let's say there's a regular audit. It's the Social Security audit that happens every 4 years. Everybody should prepare for it or keep it in mind at least. And during those times, what's flagged mostly, besides Social Security payments and tax payments and so on, but is what they look into, what we see a lot of times is missing documentation, for instance, around bonus payments. So we've had the question asked once, why did that person receive a 10K bonus payment in 2023? And we looked at each other and couldn't remember because that HR person wasn't there anymore. So making sure to document that is very helpful. Then, of course, tax treatments of benefit payments. Benefits are great in a company, but in Germany, you have a threshold of tax-free benefits that you can offer, and you can easily go over that threshold. So really making sure that your benefits are in place. And right now, we're also seeing that seemingly normal benefits that everybody knows of, like urban sports, I heard the other day, that the auditors are requesting more information about this because they keep on finding situations where it's handled wrong. So of course they're going to poke into that more often. And then, especially the German persons in the room, they're going to roll their eyes, but the question around freelancers always pops up as well, because that is scrutinized very, very closely. Are freelancers real freelancers, or are they essentially employees where, like a backlash of Social Security payments can happen? And in Germany, this dates back 4 years, so it can become quite expensive. And then different situations are also around reporting. So year-end closing, we're in February now. A lot of companies are doing year-end closings right now. So there you can find inconsistencies in headcount numbers, how they're considered in different departments again. And then there's also other audits that you need to keep in mind in Germany. Let's say security audits, like if a company wants to get a special certification, they're going to be very heavily audited to make sure that they receive the certification. And there, a lot of workflow documentation needs to be set up. And that's, sometimes the red flags that you really, really have to look out for. Are we ready for the situation?
Yeah, and I find like when really going through those audits and answering the question, a lot of times for me, sometimes pulling the data isn't so difficult, but when you're a team of one, like at my last company, I was a team of one, you kind of like are the owner of the processes in your head. You're like, I just know how to onboard someone. I just know how a termination will go and that sort of thing. But when you're asked, like, what is the process? If you're finding yourself, oh, I have to write it down, and like maybe those are kind of signals in your head, like, okay, we should maybe make standard operating processes, like somewhere documented that if we were asked, like, what does the onboarding process look like? What does the recruitment process look like? That you can kind of like pull that out. And I find that maybe in a global workforce, remote workforce, different countries and different even states within the US can have these different processes. So making sure they're separated out and kind of and go, and be able to just kind of pull when needed. And keeping them updated too. Sometimes I've looked back in old processes and I'm like, oh, that's not how we do it anymore. Just trying to stay on top of that. And I think one thing that's helped us within Leapsome, we're able to activate workflows. So I personally, there's a few audits that have to happen every year in the US, like a 401k audit. I have basically a workflow that says, hey, next month is the audit. Here's the report that you usually pull, blah, blah, blah. But just kind of those automatic reminders, because those deadlines can come up really fast. I mean, looking at the calendar this morning, I can't believe we're already almost through February. These for beginning of the year deadlines come up super fast.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think what's interesting also in your part is the different legal situations between the different states that you also have. So if you have your headquarter in New York, but you have different offices in different parts of the US, the different legislation that might come into play. Where in Germany, we're lucky, we have one legal system for all of Germany, but in the US, I can imagine that's a little bit more difficult.
It absolutely can be. And I would say we have employees in the States with like a lot of laws, like New York State specifically. We have some people in California. Anyone in the US like knows California compliance laws, like I'm here for you. We'll get through it. But yeah, no, it can be a lot. And I think that's why it's really helpful, like knowing your resources on how to stay on top of those different state, like whether it's your legal team, whether it's your PEO, just staying on top of all that. But Erica, can you share an example of something that seemed minor internally, but led to a lot of follow-up externally when it came to, those inconsistencies?
Yeah, I think the example that you already mentioned around the onboarding process is a good example. And I have that as an example because I had to go through that. I'm not sure what kind of an audit it was, maybe data security audit or so, where it was a simple question. What does your onboarding process look like? Because it handles a lot of personal data of the employees and so on. And when writing that down, that process, you notice how many bits and pieces go into it. So like simple thing like the laptop, who do you have to notify to order the laptop? Who will set that up? So who will essentially receive personal information of the new employee joining? The steps that go into the onboarding process. You have it in your head and you think, okay, it's going to be a one-pager, and all of a sudden you have a 6-page document written down. And also, I mean, this is German specific again, but in onboarding processes, I think almost every company has that. You have onboarding gifts, like a hoodie or even more elaborate gifts. In Germany, those are non-cash benefits. So those need to be considered for payroll or a year-end closing at the latest, because that has to be calculated into the non-cash benefits. And another, this is a little bit, not every company will face that. Oh my God, it's snowing again here in Berlin, so I'm distracted by that. But one example that I also had was during a due diligence process. So there, the situation was that I think it was the acquiring company or the company that was in the lead, they wanted to see all of the employment contracts, which is very usual. Of course, they're going to want to see what financial risks might be within the contracts, like are they set up correctly? Do they have all the important clauses and so on? But in that company, it was totally forgotten that the contracts all had post-contractual non-compete clauses. And I'm not sure how it is in the US, but in Germany, if you have those clauses, you should review them very regularly to make sure, do you still want to keep those clauses in the contract? Because essentially they can become very expensive as well once an employee leaves. So this was actually viewed as a financial risk, and they dug deeper. I think the merger happened and everything, all good, but it was a red flag in the beginning that was raised when reviewing the employment contracts.
Yeah, in the US that didn't come up as much, but recently there's been a few states with some legislation on like what you can entail in a non-compete and stuff like that. So just really making sure if you're sending an offer letter in that state and it has the clause, just kind of doing that double check. But no, we've very, very similar things up here.
Well, in Germany, I think, I'm not sure when it was, a couple of years ago, the regulations also changed a bit. So it used to be that non-compete clauses were very broad and they were more specified, because you essentially don't want to ruin the career of a person once they leave the company, but some of the clauses tended to go into that direction. Yeah,
exactly. Well, we've been talking a lot about, the red flags that pop up, those situations where things are inconsistent. I'd love to shift to, what do audit-ready HR teams do differently? So, Erica, based on what you've seen, what really distinguishes audit-ready HR teams from more reactive HR teams?
Yeah, I think really important is knowing what might happen. So knowing what kind of audits might happen. Some of them I just mentioned. The regular audit, everybody in Germany knows about this, but even other audits you never really thought about. Could they potentially happen? And knowing when they could potentially happen. Also, I think that teams that are ready for an audit don't just prepare before the audit or for the audit, but they prepare their day-to-day work in a manner where they don't have to do the preparation for the audit when it comes. And you mentioned this earlier already, reviewing what you have, reviewing the data that you have, reviewing the documents, reviewing the processes. You just mentioned the process is completely different than what it was, 6 months ago or so. And also ownership. I think we mentioned that before as well. Who owns the process, who owns the document, well, not owns the documents, but who makes sure that the documents are up to date and so on. So that, I think, are really strong signs of a audit-ready HR team.
Yeah. And I think, in the age of, we want to be more efficient, we want to be quick, we don't want to spend so much time in all this paperwork and stuff. But a lot of times, I think there's a lot of cool things that can be done even with AI to double check your documentation and like cross check across. We've kind of been experimenting that ourselves. But I think for me, strong documentation doesn't always mean more paperwork or more bureaucracy. I think having that strong documentation really saves you time in the end. You'll have fewer surprises, cleaner audits, and really better decision making like under pressure. So I think it's really how you turn good intent into like a defensible practice. but yeah, I think, we're a lot of times we're so, HR, we need to get out of the paperwork in the weeds and all that stuff, but spending a short amount of time in the weeds, make it clean, make it right. And then, yeah, I think there's a lot of cool things you could leverage with AI to stay on top of it too. But that's
definitely
a whole other webinar.
I mean, you can say about AI what you want to, but here I see it as an assistant, and it can help so much in so many situations. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. One point I want to come back to is the kind of cross-functional role we have with our payroll finance. How do strong HR teams kind of approach that ownership across all of our cross-functional stakeholders?
Yeah. I mean, I think the ownership in itself. So what I sometimes see is that teams assume that there's an ownership, that a different department handles certain processes or certain data, but it's actually never been defined. So really defining who owns what across different departments, and also, especially when you see HR, payroll, finance, legal department, seeing each other as stakeholders, because there are dependencies, especially between those departments, and really regularly communicating and synchronizing on different topics, like the changes again. Making sure that you communicate process changes that you might have in your HR department. This might be really important to know for the legal department or for the finance department. I mean, I've had that situation quite often where finance says, oh, we know how HR does it. And then in the end, you listen to the process and you think, oh my God, this was a year ago. We haven't done it this way for a long time. So that, I think, really, really helps.
Yeah. And I think one thing that's helped me so much is just like have a coffee chat or just a casual meeting with someone in your finance team, legal team. And just, I think for me, I'm always so curious, like, what can I do to make your job easier?
Exactly.
Like, what can I do to prevent surprises on your end too? And really just have that honest conversation. I mean, I think it surfaced from my finance team that, if we have someone leaving the company in 2025, and then maybe they receive a payment that's like a later bonus payment in 2026, like that's something that needs to be flagged because that payment's going to be booked in a completely different way. So I think just being really curious also with your teams on what are those pain points that always come up, like the person that left one year but got paid in a different year, like those, like
totally.
know ahead of time, like those pain points, and then you can always flag it. And then, I mean, it even comes down to when we do a bonus pay run, like, hey, finance team, FYI, this is how much it's going to be. This is how much we need in the bank, blah, blah, blah. Like just knowing, like being really proactive and knowing what your stakeholders need in advance. And I think just create that relationship, know that you're trying, like establish that you're also trying to help them, I think is super important.
Oh, definitely. I mean, nobody wants to do anything wrong. It's just knowing what the other person or other department needs and so on. I think the crossover between 2025, 26 is really a good example as well. And especially, I mean, I've worked with a lot of startup companies where financing, is sometimes stable, sometimes not so stable because you're waiting for payments. So really making sure to communicate, okay, we have January coming up, performance reviews have been done, salary increases will take place, or bonuses are being paid out, especially in teams where you have a lot of sales people, who receive their bonuses, really making sure to communicate that. So finance already knows, okay, we should check our bank account is really filled up for this.
Super important.
Yeah, exactly.
We have, just to kind of take a quick break, I would love to do another poll with the audience. And I will have our back-end team post that. So the question is, what habits or routines does your team have to be audit ready? We've kind of mentioned a few of the, maybe it's not a poll, more of just a chat interaction, sorry. But yeah, put in the chat, like what are the things that work for your team? Anything that we didn't mention today, those best practices?
I mean, we can only learn from others as well.
No, exactly. Erica, is there anything that you've seen from a client or just that was really unique in their practices? I mean, we can watch the chat too, but would also be curious.
I think it boils down on what we kind of talked about already. So really getting all the different departments to one table, let's say. We have some clients who do very regular meetings between the different departments to see, what is coming up in the next quarter, what do we need to look out for. Sometimes audits, or where teams really work well together is if there is a certification audit coming or so on, really flagging this to all the departments that need to know, or perhaps informing teams that might not need to know, just to make sure, do you need to know this, and so on. So that's, I think, a really good practice to have. Communication. I mean, in every company, communication is key. In every life, communication is key. So making sure of that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it looks like in the chat, we have Crystal. We try to audit ourselves quarterly. I think that's a great practice.
That is really good.
It stays top of mind, because even if you do like twice a year or the once a year, you're like, it leaves your brain pretty fast of where all those things live. So I think that's great. I keep the different audits I pull in the same Google Drive folder so I can grab and repeat. I think that's perfect. Keep it all in one place. Plan in audits in the general P&C roadmap. Yes, that's something we do as well, because they can be very time consuming, and you have to plan that in of timing, when we're going to do it, who's available, that sort of thing. Consistent self audits. Yes. Reviewing files, periodic I-9 documentation. Absolutely. Super important to always stay on top of. Nice.
Cool.
Well, this is great. Please feel free to keep sharing over time. So the goal is to reduce our compliance risk long term. So Erica, from your perspective, what systems or workflows most effectively reduce that compliance risk over time?
When looking at systems, I think is when you have a system that you plan to implement, or you have a system in place already, is really trying to use that system as the one point of truth, as we always like to say, and really making sure that all the, let's say in the HR department, that all the HR data is in there, all the documents are saved in there, that general workflows are set up. I mean, you mentioned that you set up different workflows for the 401k, whatever audits that happen, but using those workflows as well in the system that you have. And then really thinking like, for the workflows, again, I think the workflows are a really great functionality. If you're being asked the same question again and again, or you have to re-explain the same information again and again, is there a workflow that I can set up around it? So the employees, the supervisors, and whoever is really informed of this, and which reminders can I use? So somebody mentioned the putting it into the roadmap, and then having reminders set in place for the different timings of the roadmap to really do that audit that you want to do. So yeah, that's.
Yeah. And I think that could also be another cool use case for AI, is even maybe copy and upload your roadmap in and see if there are any gaps. Like you could say, we have this audit plan for this month, and then maybe ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever it is, could be like, oh, but do you remember this? Like in this state or in this country, you have to do this. So maybe even cross-checking your roadmap with the use of AI is super helpful, because I think the goal is to keep reducing on those manual touch points, those manual interactions. I think a former company, we would a lot of times have like an internal people and culture tracker of like, yes, this audit is done and that sort of thing. But sometimes like people weren't great on updating if it was done or not. Like, yes, it got done, but then I open the tracker and I'm like, oh, are we overdue on this? Like, I think just having those as much automation as possible to be able to go through that, because those manual processes can really, one, slow you down, and then throw you off of like, was it updated, was it not? So yeah.
And it's also to reduce any errors, So what sometimes happen is when you copy data from one system to another system, and the manual adjustments that you just mentioned, those can really become like really error prone when you don't make sure to have one system in place and really go through the workflows there.
Yeah. So can you speak on, the importance of having a connected HRIS system, like how it can really be kind of your one source of truth?
Yeah. I mean, one source of truth is also, and perhaps from an example, what I had in a couple of companies. I mean, sometimes an HR system is implemented and it's used for certain points, but not used to its entirety, where it can help really a lot of processes. I've had the situation, and I still wonder about this, where documents were stored in the HR system, but then you had documents stored on G Drive as well, where I guess legal wanted to have it stored in a separate folder, but then they had the challenge of knowing which document is actually updated, and the sharing and the duplicating of documents, that made it really difficult between the departments. And especially in a system like Leapsome, for instance, you can really say who has access to which data. So why share it or why store it in a G Drive when you can give other people access to the system? And they're also, I mean, making other stakeholders, employees, supervisors, legal department, whoever, understand the data that is needed and that is input, the documents where they are stored, really explaining to them that it's very quickly to access everything from this system. You don't have to put it into G Drive. It will make your life more difficult. And I mean, another example is also supervisors. As I mentioned in the beginning, sometimes I wanted to have reports or I had to deliver reports. But if you have one system in place where you show everybody, this is how you can pull your own reports, this is how you get the basic data out of it, then you can do whatever you want with it in Excel. I think that makes it more of a connected system where actually everybody wants to use it to receive the information that they need.
Yeah. And I think with the documentation, I was just thinking the earlier days of my career when HRIS wasn't as much of a thing, like storing documents in there. I remember that it was probably one of my first jobs. We had paper files for everyone that we would always print the documents, paper files, and then we would also save those in the Google Drive, and occasionally we would upload some things into whatever system that we were using at the time. So in theory, yes, it felt safer to have things in different places, but you could have 3 different employee files, one in the system, one in the Google Drive, one in paper, that could all be different. Because maybe someone didn't file this in the paper file, and maybe someone didn't upload this into the HRIS. So actually, it's kind of a matter of, I think there was this real kind of giving up your safety net that needed to happen when moving to an all-in-one HRIS of trust this is our one source of truth. If you need to pull anything, you can access it here. But I think that was a big shift. I mean, I think we're a little past that, but I just remember early in my career people being like, but we have to have it on paper. We have to print it out. So yeah, I always think it's so interesting how that evolves over time.
I think that still happens sometimes, and we see it sometimes where you have your HR system, let's say Leapsome, you have all your documents, your data in there, but then you have a separate Excel sheet, for instance, to track all payroll changes that might come.
Yeah.
Why do that when you can put it into the system? You can just set up an extra, what do we always suggest to do, to set up a payroll changes attribute in the system, so you can track it in there, and then you pull it from the system. It's all in there, no extra Excel sheet or whatever that you need to update. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I remember those times well, the
Oh my
paper
gosh.
documents and putting everything into a filing system again, just to make sure in case everything, not
Well,
trusting.
yeah, it probably stems, us HR people, we're so detail oriented and so motivated to make sure that we have everything on one place. But I think we need to give ourselves that permission, like lean into the automation, lean into that all in one systems. And then it gives you your time back too, which I think is super, super important. So we've talked about earlier on the call, like I've experienced being like a team of one, probably people on this call too. If you wanted to improve compliance without adding headcount, where do you start?
Um, I think really starting with clarity, starting with clarity and picking one area that you really want to look at, or ask yourself what brings up the most friction in my day-to-day work. Or if I think about, okay, I have to set up a report, how uncomfortable do you feel with that? So really going through it step by step. I also mentioned earlier, making sure that others also understand why we are asking for data, why data has to be input into a system. It's not that HR is nosy and wants to know everything. It's really to have it ready for the requests that you might send to us. And one point of truth, I can't mention that often enough, making sure of that. And then I think what's really important, what you mentioned, using AI to do this, or having AI help you. The workflows, for instance, like when I had to set up the onboarding process for the data security audit, if I would have had AI at the time, it would have been so much quicker. And sometimes you think of, oh, I should be writing this down just to have it on paper, to have it stored somewhere. And using AI, no matter which tool you use, is so simple. And I'm maybe old school. I just barely found it a couple of months ago, but using the audio function in ChatGPT, for instance. I mean, of course, always minding data protection, no sensible data, and so on. But if you have to explain your workflow process, why not talk to ChatGPT, explain everything to them, and then send it off and ask them, give it a good prompt. Please set up a good workflow for this. And it's done within seconds. And then you just have to adjust it, put it somewhere where everybody can access it, and it's done. So, and no added headcount is needed for that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we try to really focus on when we're thinking about all the different automations we can set up internally, is like these things that we're doing in AI, like really gives you your strategic time back. Like in theory, I think, compliance is so important. It keeps the lights on, it like keeps you compliant, it's all the important things. But if you can, use those automation, those workflows, and have all the data in the right place, it really gives you time back to do that important strategic HR work, which is really cool. And something we've implemented also on our team is we're really trying to cross-train everyone when it comes to these topics in some capacity. So we never have the issue of one owner who only knows where this report is or knows how to submit this audit. Like, we're really trying to practice that, if someone were out of PTO, if they were sick, whatever, then someone can jump in and generally know, or it's documented in our team documentation, like, hey, if we get a request for this, this is exactly where you find it. I think it would really be cool to set up also an AI agent for your team to be like, you could just ask like, oh no, Sammie's out on vacation. Where do I find this? And then the agent can be like, I pulled this Google Drive, or I pulled this. So again, separate webinar, but
separate webinar. Yeah, actually, I will be joining that, because that's what we're looking at within our internal processes as well. So really setting up assistance, like hybrid assistance between employees and AI, and where can you really pull information from easily. Yeah,
exactly. I'd love to go back to the audience again for another question, another prompt. I'd love for you to share, and in the spirit of us talking about AI automation, what's one manual process you'd love to remove or automate if you could? Maybe it'll even get you thinking for after this call. Like I'm going to automate that. I'm going to. Mm-hmm. Which would be
I'm
really
looking into the chat and I see Maria just wrote, it's very important also know we will fix it later. So really, if you notice it, write it down. Like I said, talk to ChatGPT, make that note for yourself, or explain the process, explain the workflow, and then you already have it in place somewhere. It doesn't have to be perfect. So, always the 20-80 rule. If you get 20%, at least write it down somewhere, jot it down. That's already half the work.
Exactly. No, that's so important. One manual process you wish you could remove or automate. We can keep thinking on it. Anything for me, it's like, like certain payroll things. I think like we've made some really cool updates in our product to be able to, like you said, I used to work with kind of that external payroll corrections, but now it's like all in the platform. You have the whole history of exactly what was done before. So I feel like all these things have come a long way in a short amount of time.
Oh yeah, definitely.
We have a few typing.
I mean, unless there's still some companies that work that way, that have everything on paper in a shoebox or whatever. So, exactly. I mean, there's still improvement to be made, but I mean, these are not companies that we usually work with, but it's it helps so much. Don't write it down on paper. Just put it into a system right away.
Yeah. Carissa said time and date stamping updates, always forget to. I think that's a great AI use case maybe for a workflow or something there. Definitely, I think you could look into that. I totally get it. Nice.
I mean, and also like if you have workflows in a system like Leapsome, it's also being able to track I mean, of course, if you send out an email, you can track it there as well, but who sent out the email from which system? If you send it out through the system itself, then you can track it there. For instance, I mean, the 31st of March is coming up really quickly, as we noticed, first quarter is halfway through. But you need to, in Germany at least, you need to notify of vacation days, like here, use up all your rest vacation days that you might have carried over from the last year, or in October, or usually in October, you do the same thing. But if you set up a workflow through the system to at least inform the employees, you can also, you have the date and time in the system already.
Yeah, no, exactly. Amisha said performance reviews, semi-automate. Yeah, absolutely. Have that rolling calendar of when they kick off, and totally agree. Identifying federal state specific laws that apply to each employee. Yes. Another potential AI use case, like maybe putting in where all your employees are, all the things to be aware of. I mean, it pulls from lots of different spaces. Definitely check with legal, cross-check with legal. Be a good starting place to kind of give you that checklist. Well, thank you all for those responses. So let's look forward a little bit. I think we always like to kind of close with like, what's a practical takeaway? So Erica, if you could give HR teams one priority for the next 3 to 6 months to reduce compliance risk, what would you say?
Just one. I think I was going to say ownership, but I think knowing what might come. So preparing yourself through awareness, knowing which audits might take place in your company, in your country, in your department, and knowing or anticipating what is typically reviewed, what is needed, what documents you will have to produce, what data. And and I think from that, you already have a good setup of how to prepare the rest. So I think that's a good base point to start on. I think we mentioned a lot of topics here using AI, asking, okay, what is a typical audit situation in Germany or in New York, in Wisconsin, and wherever you are, and then deep diving further into it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Like really having that roadmap, and so that you can be proactive, like what needs to be addressed and what all needs to be documented. I think like really just having the basics somewhere is huge. So I mean, just bringing it back to the audience, I mean, what's one action that you're taking away from this session to kind of close us out? I think it's so important to share those learnings and see what sticks. I mean, compliance is so broad. You can go all these different ways, which now, like we said, we can be like compliance and AI, how to
yeah. And it's also sometimes a different understanding. I mean, I'm born and raised in Berlin. My brain thinks German. Mm-hmm. And I think when Germans typically hear compliance, they think of, oh, this is something that the compliance officer takes care of, or the legal department takes care of, like non-compete things, or like receiving presents, how to handle that, and the compliance audits that are made. But globally, you think of compliance, anything that could go wrong within, documentation, legal risks, and so on. So it's a different viewpoint of what compliance actually is. And looking at it, it's a very broad topic.
Yeah, exactly. Amisha said, ensuring clear ownership and keeping everything updated on a regular basis. I love it. Yeah. Schedule those coffee chats with your cross-functional teams and say, like, how can I make your job easier? How can we make things clearer? I think clarity is the theme, because that will really help. Use AI ChatGPT to document processes. Love it. Love the takeaway. Super nice. And Yana from our team just threw in an article for more in-depth insights on HR compliance and how to streamline your processes. Check out our guide. Be sure to do that. Feel free to drop whatever else in the chat, but we will start closing this out. I just want to thank everyone so much for joining us today. And thank you, Erica. Like I said, I feel like we could have talked for 2 hours.
We're going to do a coffee catch up after this. So I'm going to go visit you in New York.
Yes, please do. Everyone will receive a recording after this call. So don't feel like, that keep an eye out for that email. But again, thank you so much. It was so great to see everyone from different locations, different roles, different companies, and join us for the next one. And thank you again, Erica. This was really, really nice.
Thank you, Sammie. It was a really nice exchange. I mean, I lived in the States for a while, but looking at it from an HR perspective, I've never done in that sense. So also really interesting to see how you guys do it over there.
Yeah, so nice, so nice. Well, I hope everyone has a great rest of the week. Stay warm wherever you are, or if it's already warm, lucky you.
Lucky you. Not in Berlin.
Exactly. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.